Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Today we are kickstarting a new challenge for the festive season. I am going to be doing the 12 Days of Christmas HHP style, starting off with a little ice fishing getaway for Igloo. When I was first deciding to do this challenge, I did a little bit of research about the 12 Days of Christmas and realized it actually occurs after Christmas rather than before. So I have been living in ignorance my entire life of what the 12 Days of Christmas even meant. So even though this technically isn't correct, I still wanted to do this decorating challenge leading up to the day of Christmas because that just seems a little more festive to me. I started off the build with changing the weather and the time of day. It just doesn't feel right to do a winter build without some snow in the air. I also changed the time of day to be a bit earlier since it made the environment feel a bit colder to me. Something about the color of the water going from more blue to a greenish blue feels chillier to me, but who knows, that could just be a personal opinion. Igloo's house exterior was already in pretty good shape from a prior build I had done with him, but I did want to add a little door plate. I went back and forth a bit on the fish or the ship wheel, but ultimately went with the fish. I like how the gray picks up the bottom portion of the house, so it feels a bit more cohesive to me. I also think I'm happy with the placement of the house, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started on the pathing. I downloaded a couple of custom designs and have those included in the description below in case any of you would also like to use them. For now, I'm gonna have this plank pathing just line the walkway from the dock to the house, but I might expand that a little bit later on. I'm thinking of having a little fish storage area to the right of his house, and I may end up wanting to put pathing underneath that, but I'm just not sure how big that area will end up being. So for now, just gonna focus on the walkway and then can always revisit that in case I do feel like adding on to the area. I'm not quite done with the pathing yet, but I am going to switch gears real quick to fencing since I'm having a hard time figuring out how big I want the ice fishing section to be. And I'm thinking I'm going to end up going slightly industrial with this build, so I'm going to include some of the corrugated iron fencing in the front, which I have never used, but actually love how it turned out in this space. Fencing intermission done. So I'm gonna switch gears back to the pathing again to get this little ice section. And I know we're already technically on an iceberg, I guess, but I wanted to differentiate the section where Igloo would be drilling holes to actually do the ice fishing itself. So that's why I downloaded this path, and I think it does a good job of still looking like ice on top of other ice, but it also it's a good blend, but also diversifies it, I guess, if that makes any sense. that's a pretty good size. I don't want too much of the ground to be taken up by this path, so it might just be that little section in the front of the plot. So now that my pathing is officially done, or at least for the time being anyway, again, I might revisit some of the plank area, I am going to move over to decorating. And luckily there are quite a few fishing items in the game thanks to fishing tourney rewards. So I will definitely be leveraging a lot of those, but I also want to include some other items that I don't use very frequently. And I think the retro transportation stop, the utility pole, and the yacht would all work really well in this space since they fit both the fishing theme and are also pretty industrial looking items. And those are all three that I don't think I've ever used in a build anywhere. So while I'm scrolling here for what's probably going to be quite a bit of time, I would love to know what y'all's favorite holiday movies are. If you have one that's impressive, I don't think I could pick one. It kind of depends on the year and maybe what I have going on in my life, and then I'll find myself gravitating towards one movie over another. But I would say I probably have maybe 4 consistent favorites. I love White Christmas, which is an oldie but a goodie. That movie never fails. I think it just hits every single time. For the rom-com lovers out there, I love The Holiday. And then 2 of more of my, I guess, more modern maybe picks would be The Polar Express and Elf. I think all 4 of those are very, very different, but also just they all are great in their own ways. Okay, now that I have a decent number of things down on the ground and it's starting to kind of clutter the space up, I'm gonna go ahead and start placing things where I think I want them or just even out of the way. And my vision here with the jail bars in the boat is that this would be kind of like a marina parking-ish. I mean, I know normally boats would probably be a little more elevated, or in his case, it would actually be in the water, but since we can't do that, I'm just gonna use my imagination here. And then placing the retro transportation stops over here to the right to kind of mimic that storage area that I mentioned earlier. And again, an item I really don't ever use. I think if I want this kind of look, I would normally go for the storefront instead. But I think this version works really well too with the fencing. It just all kind of leans, I guess, yeah, more industrial looking. I also had no idea that when you customize the exterior of these containers, it also changes the fish that are inside them as well, which A+ touch, Nintendo. I think that was a great move. Plus then it looks like you have different fish happening here in your little market, which I love. So I also placed that fish drying rack over behind where I'm gonna have Igloo in the little chair. And I have never been ice fishing, so I have no idea if this makes even any kind of sense to have a drying rack next to it, but I like the aesthetic of it, so I'm gonna kind of just hang with it for a little bit. It probably doesn't make sense to have things drying outside when it's snowing, but that's okay. And at this point, I did want to include more of the pathing just since I'm kind of making that over there into a stand storage type of area. So I think it makes sense to have the pathing come just a little bit further up. I don't think I'm going to have it go all the way. It might stop there, but I like the inclusion of those additional tiles there. And now we'll put little Igloo in his place for the rest of the build. Now that I think we've kind of figured out the layout of this build, I'm gonna start going in and looking for filler items, I think. I have a feeling that I'm going to be using quite a few wheat fields. I don't think that honestly makes any kind of sense to have wheat growing on ice, but they're just a good filler, and I think I'm kind of rationalizing it by pretending they're seagrass or something, which I also do think I'm going to include some seaweed in this build as well. I am going to try to somewhat limit myself to not use a ton of wheat fields though. I want them kind of just here and there. And while I keep picking up and then putting down these wheat fields everywhere, I think this might be one of my favorite things about HHP is the fact that you're like in build mode basically, and you don't have to pick it up and then drop it from your pockets over and over again to get it in the perfect spot. I feel like especially with the wheat fields, and the leaf piles are kind of this way, to be honest too. It's so hard to get the item exactly where you want it. But here, it's so much easier. We are getting pretty close to the end of this build for today, so I think all I really have left that I want to go in with are some of the little clutter items. And I'm going to try and find that fine line between complete cluttercore, but then also filling up some of the empty space we have currently on this plot. So I want to include a bucket over by Igloo that he can put the fish in, as well as just the little single fish container. Some on ice, some in the bucket, dual purpose for him. And then I also decided to include the little sardines in a jar item. I don't, again, know if it makes a lot of logical sense, but I just like the way the little jarred item looks on those stack of bags in the corner. And now I'm gonna go in with some seaweed, and kind of like the wheat fields, I'm gonna try and use them at least a little sparingly, but I do want a couple kind of randomly placed. And I think 4 might be the right number. I'm kind of thinking if I go more than 4, it's going to be a little messy looking. And the last location that I wanted to try and fill up is that area right outside the window. And I wasn't sure really which of these two items I was going to like more. I like the way that I actually don't know what the name of that item is. Not just the normal oil baler, the one that's on fire. That one I like how it gives off steam, but I like the blue of the normal one. So I kind of play around with the location of this quite a bit, honestly. And eventually I figure out a way to make both of them work just by moving the fishing rod stand over. And then that way also it gives Igloo some fishing rods to use while he's fishing. So kind of the best of both worlds there with getting to use both. And that is going to call it for our first build of this HHP countdown to Christmas. So we're going to go ahead and let Igloo know that we're all done with his remodel and then take a look at the finished build. And I will go ahead and say thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see y'all tomorrow for day 2. Y'all, welcome back to the channel. It is day 2 of the countdown to Christmas with HHP, and today's build theme is going to be dog sledding with Rudy. When thinking through the type of builds I wanted to include for these 12 days, I knew I wanted to have one of them be dog sledding. I did a little brainstorming myself of which villagers would work for which builds, and also recruited your opinions in a community post. One of you mentioned Rudy would work well for a Christmas build, and I couldn't agree more. I decided to pair him with today's build because the concept of a cat being in charge of dog sledding just feels right to me. I also want this build to have little pops of red throughout, so his coloring is going to be perfect. Similar to yesterday, I got started with changing the season, adding some snow, and playing around with the time of day. For this build, I had the idea of attempting to do some reverse pathing, which I have never tried before, but always love when other creators do this in their builds. Part of my strategy with using the reverse pathing is that the portion that doesn't have the pathing is the dog sled track, and where I do have paths, they normally wouldn't go. I wanted to create the divide between those two areas, but also still want it to all feel very wintry and snowy. So I found a super cute snowy path that has this little snowflake embellishment on it, and I think it ended up aligning pretty well with my vision. When I was first getting started, I had a little bit of a hard time with figuring out just how wide I wanted the non-pathed area to be. So I do jump around quite a bit between pathing different areas and also from pathing to furniture, as I'm hoping that will help me figure out how much space I want to leave. After putting down some of those furniture items, it still wasn't really clicking for me, so I decided to abandon that corner and move on to the back half of this plot. And this area, I do have, I think, probably a stronger vision of what I wanted it to look like, so I feel like this bit goes a bit smoother. After I finished the outline of the pathing for the back half of this build, I realized I never customized the house, so took a quick break from pathing and shifted gears a bit. Didn't do anything too fancy with the house, and I think I was a lot more decisive than I was yesterday, so really just stuck with an kind of all brown looking house with the roof and the exterior, but added a red door for a little pop of color. Afterwards, I decided to add in some cedar trees. I want to get these placed down first before I continue my pathing in this area, as well as adding some holly bushes. And then whatever portion I don't fill with trees or bushes, I am planning to completely path over. I also found some sled tracks and cute little paw print custom patterns as well, and all of these will be down in the description below, by the way. But I think they add so much fun detail to the snow, and even though everything is a pretty monotone color, I like the touch of realism that it adds. While I continue to lay down the rest of the pathing, I have today's holiday question for you all. And that is, when do you start decorating for the holidays? Are you a November 1st kind of person? Are you more of a day after Thanksgiving, if you are in the United States at least and celebrate Thanksgiving? Or do you wait until sometime in December? I personally am a November 1st kind of girl. I love Christmas decorations and also just this time of year in general. Winter is my favorite season, so I love getting to appreciate the house being all festive and decorated for as long as I possibly can. Also, follow-up question regarding the decorations. Are you guys nutcracker type of people? Are you Santa people or snowman? What's kind of the theme that you find yourself gravitating towards? I think this year for me, it's been a lot of like woodland type creatures. I find myself loving all of the bird ornaments. I love mushroom ornaments and also have a soft spot for gnomes, which I know don't like immediately scream Christmas, kind of like Santa's would or nutcrackers would, but there's something just so cute about them to me. Like in my office, I have two little gnomes that both have different types of mushroom hats, and one's holding a tree and one's holding some garland. And just those two little guys in my office with me are just so festive and fun. Now that I am almost done with all the pathing, I revisited this little problem corner area, and I think getting the rest of the build all pathed out really helped me visualize how wide I wanted the pathway to be. So with that, now we are officially ready to start decorating. I had a decent idea of some of the furniture items I wanted to use for this build, so thankfully I don't scroll too much, but I still feel like this is somehow the slowest moving part of any of my builds. I want to include a little check-in area, so I'm going to use a couple of stalls with a custom pattern to achieve that, and also want to make sure I'm including some more nature-y type of items in the area behind the house. So to accomplish that, I'll use a couple of the wild log benches and also the log stools. I also decided I didn't want to clutter this build up very much, but still did want some of the smaller decor items like the stacked bags, the little pet food bowl, and a small coffee station to go on the stall as well. So now that all of the items I'm planning on using are scattered in Rudy's front yard, gonna go ahead and start placing them where I think I want them. And the majority of the items here are actually gonna go on the left-hand side. I'm thinking about having that be more of like the station where you check in, get assigned to your sled, all that good stuff. And then the right-hand side is more of the pass-through for the dogs. So I'm not gonna add too much clutter on the right-hand side, probably just a couple of the benches, and that might be it. But I did want to make sure to add some of the cute little things over in our check-in area, as well as just making sure I'm including that pop of red wherever I can. This little puppy plushie item as well is so stinking cute. I don't think I've ever really used it before, and I had no idea it came in so many different customizations, but it is perfect for a build like this. So now I'm gonna go in and just add some final touches. I didn't like the angle of the paw prints, how I had them before, so moved them over one tile and then just fixed that area next to the stall instead. And then I played a little bit around with adding some paw prints kind of here and there, but it felt like I was just adding something for the sake of adding it, and I really want to try and avoid doing that in this type of a build. So I exited out a bit, checked on things, and then realized that I hadn't changed Rudy's outfit. So he needed to get out of his neon hoodie and instead into something cuter and warmer, I think, for the season. And I did think about maybe putting him in a coat, but something about this little vest and shirt combo on him I thought was perfect. And the little logo on it matches his nose, and it all works well with the build. Once he was in his new outfit, I did take one last look through the furniture menu and trying to see if there was anything else that I wanted to add, but then I decided, nope, doing too much, not going for cluttercore here, so I decided to leave it with that. But then when I was walking around in the area, I still feel like even though I want the right-hand side to feel more open, there was just something missing. So I decided to add just a couple more paw prints to the pathway over there. And I think that helped, one, just kind of fill up some visual space, but then also two, add to my storyboard idea of this is the path that the dogs would be taking. And just that inclusion of those little tiles, I think really helped. With those final paw prints being placed, that completes today's build. So I'm gonna let Rudy know that we're all done with his new vacation home, and then we can take a look at the finished build. As we're wrapping up, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 3. Hi y'all, welcome back to the channel. It is day 3 of the countdown to Christmas with HHP, and today's build theme is going to be ice skating with Aurora. This is also a remodel of Aurora's existing home, so the exterior is already perfect for what I have in mind, so nothing to mess around with there. And y'all know the drill by now, starting off with adjusting the weather a bit. I want some kind of snow flurries in the air and some sunlight poking through, so I made it somewhat early-ish in the morning, but I didn't want it to be too frosty looking out there. Then I got started with my pathing. While the bulk of the pathing is going to be the ice skating rink itself, I did still want a little walkway leading up to Aurora's house. I thought this sort of lived-in looking snowy path would be perfect. Kind of gives the effect of some of the snow has worn off, since it's a well-traveled portion of the build. Rather than committing to doing all of the pathing at once like I've done in some of my other builds, I decided for this one I was going to divide it into the right-hand side and the left-hand side, since they're going to be pretty unique kind of spaces that I'll be decorating. So I started getting my trees placed down surrounding the house. And then after that, I'm going to move on to decorating this portion. And this right-hand portion is going to be a bit more minimal, so I'm going with things like the wild log bench, log stakes, bushes, weeds, and flowers. More of a winter forest or like a little garden for Aurora instead. And the accent color for this build is going to lean a little light blue, so I thought this was a perfect excuse to use the white pansy. It's typically a flower I don't find myself using very frequently. I'm more of a tulip and mum kind of decorator, but I think the pansies look really nice when you want a small subdued pop of color. And our last touch on this right-hand side is going to be the cruiser bike, but since I'm already in the furniture menu, I'm gonna go ahead and grab a lot of the items I plan on using, even for the left-hand side, just since the right is almost finished. So now that I finally found the bike, going to do a little bit of rearranging since I dropped everything just right in front of the house, which I probably should have moved my cursor over here to the left-hand side since that's where most of this is going, but I didn't. So just created a little bit more work for myself, but that's okay. And with getting the bike placed, that right-hand side is complete. And I'm not really sure if I would want to really be biking in the snow like this, but I just think the item looks cute and it kind of finishes off the area. So now I'm going to move on to the left side and start by putting some of the items kind of in the relative area of where I think I might want them. But after this, I get a little lost with just the amount of space and then decide to focus on the ice skating rink pathing instead. And I wanted to make sure I didn't make the ice skating rink too large or too symmetrical, and really want to make sure I leave room around it for the decor items. So it took a little bit of trial and error just to get the dimensions right, but eventually I get there. I just wanted to make sure it felt natural and like this was just a pond that happened to be in Aurora's yard that froze over for the holiday season. So while I work on the layout of this ice skating rink, today's wintry question for you all. What is your favorite wintertime activity? Are you more outdoorsy and like snowboarding and skiing? Or do you find yourself inside, more cozied up on the couch with a book or some other kind of cozy activity? It doesn't really snow where I live. We're lucky if we get maybe 1 or 2 days of snow a year, but it does get pretty cold, especially in January and February. However, being outside in the cold without snow just isn't as much fun. So I would say I'm more of an indoors activity kind of person. I find myself on the couch quite a bit with either my Switch or reading something or working on some kind of craft. Recently, I've been trying to get into needlepoint. My grandma was great at it back in the day, and so because of that, I feel like I should be good at it. So I got this cute little kit for winter, but am finding it a little more difficult than I anticipated. I probably just need to give myself a little more time practicing with it, but sometimes with activities, if I'm not really good at it from the get-go, then I start to abandon it. But I don't want that to happen with this. But yeah, let me know what y'all like to do in these colder months. I'd love to chat with you guys in the comments. But back to the build. I decided to use the little garden lights as the entrance for the ice skating rink, and then went with a storefront towards the back. 1, because it's a good space filler, but also 2, in my mind, this would be Aurora's little garden shed during the warmer months. I added a space heater right in front, so if she gets chilly while ice skating, she can go warm up for a bit and then head back out onto the ice. I filled in a little bit more of the area with some more log stakes and then a couple more bushes. I thought I might be able to use the street lamp somewhere, but it wasn't working anywhere like I had in my mind, so I decided to delete it. Plus, I think the little garden fairy lights should be enough light anyway. We have now reached the filler item portion of this build. So I went in with a couple of shoe boxes, which may not make the most amount of logical sense to put boxes on the ground, but in my mind this would be housing different ice skates. So that was kind of the vision for that. And then I just liked the way this old book stack looked on top of that. So I went with it. Then I wanted to implement a couple of other little things like this stack of firewood. Maybe she just has that sitting outside the house so that it's more easily accessible to go inside. And then I'm going to also create a little seating area right to the left-hand side of the rink, where I'll put a pair of ice skating boots and then also a cushion. I felt at this point like the build was almost there. It just needed a little something right in front of the house. So I kept it pretty simple and just included a little wooden stool using that old book stack once again, and then the little wicker basket in front. I've also been loving the concept of using dropped items in build, so I decided to include a little snowflake that had fallen onto the ice skating rink. So now it's time to give Aurora a new outfit. I did love the sweater that she comes in already, but I wasn't using red anywhere in the build and felt like she was just standing out a bit too much. So I wanted to find something a little more neutral for her, or at least in the blue color palette. So this gray was a good option, but also she's black and white, so I thought, not the best. I think I want to put her in a color. So I did end up going with this little yodel cardigan on her, which I think looks adorable. And with that completes today's build. So I'm gonna go let Aurora know we're all done with the new vacation remodel, and then we can take a look at the finished build. So as I'm wrapping up, thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 4. Hi y'all, welcome back to the channel. It is day 4 of the countdown to Christmas with HHP, and today's build theme is going to be a tree farm with maple. For this remodel of Maple's house, she was thankfully already on the perfect plot for a Christmas tree farm kind of build. I do want to change up the exterior of her house though a bit. I wanted to make it bigger for starters. I'm imagining that the bottom floor would be more for business and then the top floor would be her personal apartment. I also think I want the door to include a little pop of color, so for that I went with red. Afterwards, I adjusted the season and weather per usual and went with midday since I felt like it was an appropriate level of snow for what I had envisioned. The path that I picked for this build took me forever to find the code for on Pinterest, and eventually I ended up finding it on Twitter actually, or I guess X. But it is linked in the description below if you would like to use it, and I just absolutely love the look of it. It's perfect for giving a natural look and blending into the snow, while also very clearly looking different than the regular snow in the game. And I used 2 different versions of this same pattern, both in the standard 9 tile path formation, and then also some single tiles to create the look of some tire tracks that I'm going to have a car go over. And then also just for the rest of the area, looking like a lot of visitors have come over the course of the day, and all the footprints have created this pattern and kind of the slushy sort of snow that you would find over a path that's been well traveled. I got the entrance portion of my pathing done and then started working on the area where the tree farm itself is going to be, and then after I get all of those placed down, I'll go back in with the path again in the areas in between the trees to create a little grid layout. My question for today for any of those of you that celebrate Christmas is probably a bit on the nose, and I'm sure some of you can guess where I'm headed with this. But do you all have a real Christmas tree or an artificial tree in your home? I have always had an artificial tree growing up and still do now as an adult, but I remember when I was little, there were a couple of years my grandparents got a real tree. I absolutely love the smell of the real trees, so that's something I feel like I'm really missing out on with an artificial one. And then I end up supplementing with tons of balsam candles in the house to kind of create that similar type of vibe. There's just something so nostalgic to me though about going to a tree farm and then tying the tree to the top of your car to drive it home. I'm going to leave the portion in front of the house just blank for now until I figure out where I'm going to be putting items. So for now, pathing is complete, which means it's time to move on to other items like furniture and fencing. And similar to a lot of my other builds so far, I'm going to be going with a lot of the nature type of items, like both types of the log benches, the log stool, log stakes, anything really that kind of looks like it came from a tree. Can you guys tell that I really like the natural furniture items? I promise I'll start using different items soon in the future builds, but for today, with the Christmas tree farm, these just felt fitting for the rustic vibe I was going for. Now that I have a decent number of items placed down, it's time to start putting them in their locations. So I'm using that wild log bench as kind of like a parking stop type of item, and doing that to create probably the smallest parking lot known to mankind. But I liked the idea of having at least one little car there. And then I'm also going to include a seating area right in front of the tree farm, and then a sled that people can use to come and put their tree on that in order to carry it out of the farm. I also felt like the tree farm itself so far was looking a little empty in there, so I decided to use some items like the log stakes, the log stool, and then I'm also going to be using firewood and the pine cones just to kind of clutter the area up a little bit. I felt like this left half of the entrance was looking a little empty compared to the right-hand side, so I ended up adding a little bit more fencing to this area and then just have the sled right in front of it. I do end up changing this at the very end of the build and instead put in 2 of the sleds, just so that way people have options, and I am glad I made that last minute change. I kind of like how the different sides are not necessarily symmetrical with the fencing. Alrighty, it's finally time to tackle the area right in front of Maple's house. So for over here, I'm gonna go pretty simple, honestly, with the decor, but I wanted to fill it in and make it look a little wooded in the area, so added a couple more trees, decided to add some bushes here and there, but then the majority of this area I am going to path over with just a couple of little decor items kind of here and there. So I wanted to include a little tabletop festive tree just because, one, it looked cute and I didn't really have much else in the build involving red, so I wanted to pick up a little bit of that with the door. And then also the lantern right beside it. My thought is that when she comes out, she can pick that lantern up to go with her to go check on the trees in the farm. And then I'll also include another pine cone and one of the little gardening, not the garden wagon with the flowers, but the one that has the dirt in it, whatever that item's called, because I think that's another good kind of underrated outdoorsy type of item. Sometimes when building in this kind of almost bird's eye view, I have a hard time seeing some gaps in areas, so I'd like to come down to, I guess, the normal playing view is what you would maybe call it, to see areas that might be bothering me. So like that's when I noticed that I wanted to include a couple of weeds kind of here and there in some of the blank areas that I have. And not all of them are honestly that visible, but I guess depending on the angle that you would be looking at the build, you might be able to see them. So that's good enough for me. With that final little touch, that completes today's build. So I'm gonna let Maple know that we're all done with her new vacation home, and then we can take a look at the finished build. So as we're wrapping up, thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 5. Hi y'all, welcome back to the channel. It is day 5 of the countdown to Christmas with HHP, and today's build theme is going to be a ski lodge with Dobie. And I have to give credit for the inspiration for this build, so a shout out to ACNH_Nooks Isle on Instagram, because the main star of today's show is going to be a ski lift. I know a couple of people have done something similar at this point, so to be completely honest, I'm not even sure if they were the first creator to do this, but they're the creator that exposed me to this as an option. You have to use your imagination a little bit, but essentially, if you haven't already seen this, it's possible to create a ski lift type of illusion by using utility poles, some type of bench, and different cliff tiers in your build. This was one of the only plot options in HHP that had multiple tiers and I thought would work with the winter build, so I went with it. I did start off by expanding the size of Dobie's house as well as updating the exterior to give these cabin ski lodge vibes, which I think fits perfectly. I then started looking for some of the furniture items that I'm going to be using for this build. I decided to go with the furniture rather than starting off with my pathing like I normally would, because I don't think I'm going to actually include that much pathing in this design. It'll be more of accent and kind of little decor items rather than a full path, because to be honest, there's not that much room on this plot to include a full path. So for the ski lift, I decided to go with the swinging bench. I just feel like that gives kind of the old school vibes of a gondola to me, because it has the bar on the top. While I'm going through the menu and picking out all of the furniture items I want to use for this build, I'll go ahead and ask y'all today's question. Have you ever been skiing or snowboarding? I personally am a skier, or at least whenever I travel to snowy climates, I choose to ski. I don't know if that necessarily makes me a skier, since I am definitely still a beginner, because I can basically only handle green runs. But I love the snow sports culture and feel like no other sport is like it. The concept of après-ski is so fun. The scenery that you get to see wherever skiing locations are is absolutely stunning. The outfits are fun, just all of it. I love it. And I have never attempted snowboarding. My mom and grandma grew up skiing, so that's just what I did as well. But I feel like snowboarding looks so cool. So who knows, maybe one day I'll give it a shot just to say I tried it. So now I have my ski lift all set up, and if I had had more space, I might have included a second one or maybe even one on the other side of this build, but I didn't want just the entire thing to only be the lift. I wanted to have more other items included in this as well. So I guess I'm just gonna imagine this is one of those lifts that only goes up at a certain time of day and then only goes down at a different point in the day. And another thing I wanted to make sure I included was lots of stations for any of the skiers on this slope to set their skis up and poles before going inside the lodge. So I had fun customizing all of these different ski patterns and really just seeing how many I could fit without it looking chaotic. For some reason in this build, I found myself jumping around a lot to different areas. I feel like sometimes I try to go with a methodical approach and start with like pathing, then going with the trees, rocks, bushes, that kind of a thing, and then finishing with furniture. For this build, I'm really just kind of all over the place, and I think that's because I was just getting excited to decorate different portions of it, which I guess is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just kind of funny watching it back, even just like reflecting on my own decorating style and thinking, okay, why didn't you just finish an area before you moved on? Apparently I just didn't want to. I also decided to kind of decorate the sides of the bottom cliff tier area as like the areas in between runs where they don't really necessarily want you going. So I included some bushes in there and a couple of rocks as well to just kind of give it this untouched nature mountain kind of feel to it. also a little random, but just as I'm placing these weeds, I feel like I didn't realize how good the winter weeds are. I know autumn weeds get so much hype, and I mean rightfully so. They are probably objectively the best in the game, but I love the winter ones now too, and that kind of bluey green vibe that they get. And I haven't really designed with them much until doing this series, but I'm a fan now. While searching in the clothing menu, I was looking for ski boots, and I don't know if these are in the game and maybe I just need to spend more time at Able Sisters, but I wasn't able to find any, sadly. But I did find something that I feel like is kind of close, and I went with some lace-up boots. Those looked kind of clunky, mimicking the vibes of like a ski or snowboarding boot, so I think that's maybe the best that I had for the occasion. So now that all of my furniture and decor items are placed, it's officially time to get started on the pathing. And if you caught yesterday's video, I am reusing one of the custom patterns that I found, but then also found a new one, which are these really cool ski tracks. So I also have those linked in the description if you would like to use them for any of your wintry builds, but I think they're just so fun, and honestly don't use up that many design slots, which is always a plus in my book. So now I'm going to go ahead, take a look, make sure I'm happy with the build, and I do end up adjusting just one thing. I didn't like that empty space behind that tree right there, so I decided to include another bush. And I didn't include this in the footage, but before I took the last little beauty shots and a picture for a thumbnail, I did realize that I didn't change Dobie's outfit. So you'll notice he does have an outfit change coming up, and I just kind of spring it on y'all, but I thought he deserved one. So with that final touch, that completes today's build. So I'm gonna let Dobie know that we're all done with his new vacation home, and then we can take a look at the finished build. As we're wrapping up, thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 6. Hi y'all, welcome back to the channel. It is day 6 of the countdown to Christmas with HHP, and today's build theme is going to be an igloo with flurry. Well, at least it's going to be sorta igloo-ish with a lot of the Frozen series items. It's pretty hard to really make an igloo without the use of fake buildings, I found out, which there really isn't too much room to do on Happy Home Paradise, and it's even more difficult when you're only dealing with a flat cliff tier. But I still wanted to give it my best shot using the available house customizations and furniture series to at least give a similar vibe. And normally I don't really like building and designing at night, but for the items I'm planning on using, it will actually be very helpful. The Frozen series has such a pretty glitter and gleam that I think comes out at night more so than day, and then also the illuminated furniture, so fun to include in a nighttime build. I don't quite have all of the Frozen series DIYs learned just yet. Making a perfect snowboy is way more difficult than I think it should be, but thankfully I have all the important ones I wanted for today's build. I started the build off with customizing Flurry's house. I think this shape is probably the closest thing we have to Igloo-esque, either this or the smaller version of this. And I just changed all of the features to the lightest tone available. And then rather than starting with the path or even the front of the build, I knew I wanted fencing to line the house, kind of dividing the build into Flurry's yard and then the rest of the plot. Afterwards, I went ahead and put out all of the Frozen items I'm planning on using. I like the idea of using both the frozen tree and cedar trees as my foliage items, and I think the two actually end up working out pretty well together. Since this plot entrance isn't symmetrical, I struggled a little bit with the layout, but ultimately decided I just needed to embrace the asymmetry and go with it. So I do add some similar items to both sides, but the right and the left will not be identical. I also don't have all of the festum items unlocked yet, but thankfully I do at least have the festive tree, so that works out well because I really wanted to use it in the white colorway for today's build. And at least with this footprint of just the regular festive tree, it actually fits in the spot right in front of Flurry's house that I had in mind, whereas I think if I used the big festive tree, even though I think that one's probably my favorite, it looks the most impressive, I think the footprint of that one is bigger and it wouldn't have fit. While the illuminated furniture and the light reflecting off of the frozen furniture items does give off some kind of glow, I did want to add a little bit more, so I included a couple of street lamps to the front of the build and on both sides by the fence. I like the height it also gives. It kind of mimics the frozen pillar, but a little bit skinnier. And on the right-hand side, I decided to add the 3-tiered snowman, and then on the left, I'm thinking of including a seating area. And I also want to use some smaller items like the tabletop festive tree and the frozen mini snow person. So I'm going to use the box-shaped cushion kind of seat as some elevation, which I think does a good job of also blending into the environment and you don't really see it that well. At first, when I was modeling out this build, I tried using a couple of other items like the barrel, some other stool items, all that good stuff, and everything was just standing out kind of like a sore thumb. So I think this one works well. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in my trees, bushes, and some hedges as my filler items for this build. And I absolutely love the hedges in winter specifically. The little snow caps that are on them I think are just elite. Now that Lurie's yard is completely filled in and all of my decor items are out, for the rest of the build, I'm going to be working on my pathing. So this is a perfect time to talk about today's wintry question of the day. So I would love to know what you guys prefer, gloves or mittens? I used to be gloves all the way, but recently I'm kind of back on the mitten bandwagon. Gloves may look a little more elegant and I guess kind of like grown up, but there's something that's just so cozy and cute about a mitten. Plus, mittens are more conducive to using hand warmers, so you can actually get the warmth to your fingertips. With gloves, I feel like my palms are sweating and my fingertips are freezing, which just nobody wants. It defeats the entire purpose. As y'all can see, I am using the Snowy Footprint custom pathing yet again. This path is just quickly becoming one of my favorites for winter builds. Today's build is also going to be the last of the series that is more winter focused and outdoors focused. I'm going to start shifting focus to other types of builds that are a bit more red and green, classic Christmas nostalgia, as well as some interiors. I wanted to give myself a little bit of time to unlock some more of the ornament and festive series items since I haven't played the winter months on this island before, and also wanted to ease into the holiday builds and appreciate some more winter focused builds as well, which has been really fun and different to work on. I've historically found it really difficult to decorate in the snow, but this has given me a new appreciation for different types of items I wouldn't normally use and how cool they can really end up being in a build. So we're almost done, but I kind of felt like there was too much open space just on the ground and also on these pillars. So I decided to use some large star fragments, and then I'm also going to be using some snowflakes dropped as well. It just kind of adds something a little fun and different onto the ground, and then also creates more intrigue, I think, to the build. Plus, adds some more light. And I've never really decorated with the star fragments, but I think they worked very well for this build. With those final touches, that completes today's build. I'm going to let Flurry know we're all done with her new vacation home, and then we can take a look at the finished build. As we're wrapping up, thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 7. Hi y'all, welcome back to the channel. It is day 7 of the countdown to Christmas with HHP, and today's build theme is going to be a Candyland Christmas Wonderland house for Sprinkle. I absolutely love the fun, whimsical, colorful direction that you can go with Christmas builds, but I don't know if I could ever do a full island with that theme. I think I just have more natural color palette preferences for large scale builds, but for something like HHP, this will be so fun and a great way to experiment with new items and different colorways than I would normally use. So to get things started, I'm going to go ahead and customize the exterior of Sprinkle's house to try and get it as close to a pink gingerbread house as I can. And then I will cover a good portion of the front with simple panels, but I wanted to at least get started with complementary colors. Pink is going to be the main color I'll be using in this build, with little pops of light blue and turquoise, which is why I think Sprinkle works so well for this build. So to get started including my pink, I put down some fencing in the back of the plot and then also chose a pink door with pink ornament wreath to add a little touch of color to the house. I wanted my pathing for this build to look like little cookie stepping stones and found these custom patterns on Pinterest, which I think are perfect. So I created a little zigzag pattern with all 4 of the different options, and I'm going to cover just about the entire plot with this cookie pattern. I'll end up removing a couple tiles here and there to put down some trees and bushes, but I wanted to at least get my pattern down first, and then I can decide where to put the foliage afterwards. So this is a little earlier in the episode than normal when I would bring this up, but since this pathing does take me a little bit, let's go ahead with our question of the day. So if you were to do a winter holiday island, what theme would you choose? Do you think you'd go the classic red and green Christmas? Would you lean more wintry blues and whites? Or are you the adventurous type and would go all out with a pink Christmas island or some other fun and different idea? One thing I actually find really fun to do with Animal Crossing is create mood boards and brainstorm ideas for future islands, whether I end up actually creating them or not. So I have considered doing both a classic Christmas island as well as a wintry snowy island. I've chosen island names, villagers, custom patterns, and some islands that I would use for each of those as well. So who knows, maybe at some point in the future I'll create those islands in the game, but for now, just even making the mood board is a fun little hobby. Alrighty, the pathing is finally done. So now I'm going to undo some of that work that I just did and put down a couple of trees and bushes kind of scattered throughout the build. I'm not going to do all of them just yet, but there are at least a couple that I know where I want to put them. So I'm going to do that first. And once again, the fact that you can't center the houses on these plots is driving me a little crazy. I would love if in the next game they bring the ability to decorate on half tiles. I don't know if that's something they would ever consider implementing, but I feel like that would make such a big difference. I mean, what would be the most ideal is just a free decorating mode, but the half tile feels like a more realistic next step to me. After the foliage, I started working on the simple panel layout to transform Sprinkle's house into a gingerbread house. And I'm not going to use too many panels since a lot of this area will end up getting covered by items anyway, but I did want the entrance portion at least showing, and then you'll probably be able to see some of the pattern peeking through some of the other decor items. Now I'm going to go through and pick out some of the items that I want to use in the build, and I'm really gravitating towards anything that is pink or festive theme, as well as anything that has some kind of accent whites and browns as well. And while the wedding welcome sign isn't really holiday themed at all, the colors are absolutely perfect, so I decided to include that, as well as the Papa Bear, which I think works super well, bringing some more of the browns from the house out into the rest of the build. And one thing that was really nice and different about this build is it ends up being pretty symmetrical. I add a couple of different decor items to either side, but the structure and the main furniture items I used are basically the same on either side, which I really like the effect that that creates, and I don't typically decorate that way. So it was kind of nice to know, okay, I put this in this place on that side, so now I'm going to do the same on the other. I was also finally able to unlock some of the additional festive DIYs that I was missing, like the big festive tree, for instance. The ornament tree is also new, and then a couple of the others as well. I think I spent, 5 hours standing on my beach with my slingshot and just waiting for balloons for hours on end, but it ended up working out. I did get quite a few that way, so I'll call that worth it. This was the point in the build where I started to feel like everything that I was placing was kind of all in one horizontal line, from like that giant ornament all the way over to the tree on the other side, and I wasn't loving the way that that was looking, so I ended up playing around with it just a little bit more. I do want it kind of to be a cluster of items, but not necessarily just all in one straight line. So I started to stagger some of the items a bit, and I think that helped a lot just from a visual standpoint to make it not look so, straight and narrow almost. I also decided that there wasn't nearly enough pink happening in the background. I want it to kind of look like Pepto-Bismol threw up on this build. So I added a couple more of the big festive trees, and I think that helped. It also filled some of the background space. And then after that, I switched gears to kind of start working on the front portion right in the entrance area. And I wanted to have a small little seating area. Also wanted to kind of bring in some more of the white coloration. So that's why I chose this little garden chair and table setup. And then after that gets placed, I'm gonna start to add a couple more clutter items, like something to go on the table, and then a couple of other things just on the floor right in the entrance area. I had really wanted to try and make this glowing moss balloon work. It kind of looks like blown up bubblegum to me, but I felt like no matter where I put it, it didn't have the effect I wanted it to. And I really wanted to be able to hide the string, so it didn't look right to me in the front of the build, and in the back behind the festive trees, you just really couldn't even see it. So I do end up giving up on it, but I think it would have been cool if I had found a way to make it work. There are so many cute pink food and drink options in the game that I honestly had a really hard time picking which one I wanted to put on the table. I went back and forth between some of the jams, some of the jellies, even some of the pies, but I ended up deciding on the frosted pretzels. I thought that they had a good combo between including the pink, but then also the turquoise. Now that the decorating and building portion of this video is done, it was time to change Sprinkle's outfit. And once again, so many pink options. I basically tried on everything that was even remotely close to a sweater or a coat, and then ended up finding, I think, the perfect one for both Sprinkle and this build. Now that Sprinkle is looking perfect and blending in so well with the build, I'm gonna go ahead and let her know that we are all done with her new vacation home. And then we can take a look at the finished build together. As we're wrapping up, thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 8. Hi y'all, welcome back to the channel. It is day 8 of the countdown to Christmas with HHP, and today's build is a Christmas themed bakery for Poppy. And today is also our first indoors build of the series, which I think will be fun to switch it up a little bit. I think I'm already happy with the size of this existing room. I want plenty of space, but not necessarily the largest room that's possible, so we'll go with this for now, and then I can always change it up if I'm running out of room. Then I'm going to go ahead and change up the flooring and the wallpaper, and I am so excited to have an excuse to use the falling snow wallpaper. It's probably my favorite in the entire game. I just find the animation so soothing, and I love the cozy vibes that it gives me. I also chose to do an accent wall, but to be honest, I'm not really sold on the one that I chose for now. So I'll probably play around with that a little bit further in the video, but I wanted to go ahead and get started on the decor and then see how much of that accent wall will really even be visible, and then to kind of see how much it bothers me or what ends up looking better down the road. So I started off the furniture by spamming a bunch of the counter tables. I'm going to be using this as some counter seating in the bakery as well as the checkout counter, so quite a few of those. Then I added some of my other favorite items in the game, the covered counter, a couple of the different ranch series items, and some other great just kitchen type items. I think some of the kitchen clutter is also some of my favorite items in the game, so it was fun being able to use this by including a kind of kitchen portion to this bakery rather than just a storefront. While I pick out the rest of my furniture items, here is today's holiday question. What is your favorite holiday dessert? Are you a Christmas cookie kind of person, or does your family have some kind of traditional desserts you make every year for the holidays? My grandma would usually make 5 or 6 different types of cookies each year, but now that she's getting older, I think I'm probably going to take over that role pretty soon, and thinking I'll adopt some of her old recipes just for the nostalgia of it all, plus I do love them, and then maybe add a couple of new ones that I've found throughout the years and am intrigued by. I love how personal and nostalgic food can be, especially during the holiday season. I feel like each individual family has something that they're always looking forward to, food-wise related to the holidays, so I would love to know how some of you celebrate. Okay, so things are finally starting to kind of take shape here in the build, and I want to make sure I'm including some festive items or just the illuminated items, anything that's part of the holiday decor series here in the game in every little area here in my build. So I want to include like a little Christmas tree situation right next to this dessert counter, and then make sure I'm including a couple things here and there on any of the surfaces that I find are free. So like I'll definitely make sure to include something on top of the fireplace. I might try to include some wreaths here and there on the walls as well, and then I'll see what else I end up having room for. And somewhat related to the question I asked earlier regarding the desserts and Christmas cookies, these two patterns are actually the reason I decided to do this build in general. I found them on Pinterest and just absolutely loved them and wanted to make sure I could use it in some type of festive build somewhere. So I think it looks super cute, like they're little cookie boxes that are ready to go out for delivery, but they're all set up here in the bakery, and I think it looks great behind those covered counters. I also decided to include a little seating area with the fireplace on the right-hand side of the bakery here. And this may be verging on more of cafe vibes rather than bakery vibes, but I thought it would be cute to have some more casual seating like this, and then kind of a place for people to hang out after they've gotten their little sweet treat. I also decided to include a couple of different rugs just to kind of divide the space up a little bit, and then also give something more interesting to look at on the floor. So used my holy grail of rugs with the lacy rug, and then also decided to use the festive rug because this is a festive build after all. So now I do have almost, I think, all of the furniture items that I'm wanting to use for this build. Again, we'll see at the very end, maybe I'll add something. But for now, gonna go ahead and move to the floors and then also the ceiling. And this was one build where I did want to make sure I included quite a few of the wall items. I think they're great with the kitchen type build because there's so many different household items that can be used for this. But then, like I mentioned earlier, wanted to also include like the festive wreath and then the ornament wreath, just for a little touch of fun on the walls. Okay, now we're on to the fun part, and that is going to be all of the little clutter items. And I am planning on using quite a few of the different dessert and food options since it is a bakery after all, and want to make sure that just the counter space looks very stocked basically. So I'll make sure to include tons of different options that are being displayed on both the counters and then also those little low built-in counters as well. And then some other fun items that you might find on a bakery counter. Like I think the glass jar is a perfect type of item. And then also some things that people or villagers, I guess, may have purchased. And then so I'll have little setups on the high top seating and then also on our couch seating as well. So while I get all of these items placed, I'll let y'all enjoy this little speed build, and then I'll catch back up with you at the end of the build. So the last thing I want to change on the build is just turning off the light on that illuminated present, and with that final touch, that completes today's build. I'm gonna let Poppy know we're all done with her new vacation home, and then we can take a look at the finished build. As we're wrapping up, thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 9. Hi y'all, welcome back to the channel. It is day 9 of the countdown to Christmas with HHP, and today's build is Fauna's hot cocoa stand. We are back outside today. I did think about having this be an indoor cafe, but ended up deciding to make this an exterior build, just so it feels different enough from yesterday with our bakery. And also because I really want to be able to use the truck item for this build, and I've never tried, but I feel like you can't use that indoors. But who knows, maybe I actually will need to try that out at some point. And for this build, I am planning on covering a very large portion of the plot in custom pathing, which is kind of nice when it's just this large rectangle space, rather than a twisty path. It feels much quicker of a process since I really only have to change the custom pattern that I'm using a couple of times. And I love this path that I ended up choosing. I feel like it fits really well for the vibe of this build, and then also I think it would be great on a snowy city core island. Okay, now that my pathing is all done, I'm gonna go ahead and get started with some of the foliage items. And I want to include a combination of both the cedar trees with the Christmas lights on them, as well as festive trees in this build. So the cedar trees are really only going to be in the background, kind of as like a space filler, but also to give some realism to the build. I also went ahead and changed the exterior of Fauna's house at this point, and I made sure to include pops of red with the roof and the door, just because that's going to be my accent color for today's build. I am also going to be using some flowers in this build, which I don't really feel like I've had a good chance to use too many of them in this series so far. And since pansies are a winter flower in real life, I decided to go with those, and again, chose red to align with my little pops of color intermittently throughout the build. Alrighty, now to choosing my items. So this takes a minute since I want to use a lot of different furniture items in this build. So while I'm finding and selecting all of those in this sea of a catalog, let's move on to today's holiday question. What is your favorite holiday beverage? Are you a hot cocoa drinker, a festive coffee, tea, mulled wine maybe? I do love a hot chocolate, but I tend to find it less enjoyable to make rather than if I ordered it out. If I'm making something for myself at home, then I find I definitely gravitate towards a fun festive coffee with some kind of syrup. Lately, I've been going for gingerbread a lot, but also love a toffee or peppermint as well. And I know flavored coffees definitely aren't for everyone. My husband drinks his coffee black, and I could never. It's like gross, bitter bean water to me. I much prefer my coffee with milk and flavor, so it tastes more like a treat than coffee. But I would love to know what y'all go for during the holidays when you want a fun drink. And if it happens to be hot chocolate and you make it yourself, and have a good recipe that you don't mind sharing, I would love to find a good at-home hot chocolate solution. So now that all of my items are all over the place, right in the middle of everything, let's go ahead and start placing and customizing. And so I want to use the storefronts and these little curtain partitions, as well as the covered counter to look like an extension to Fauna's house. And then that is going to be where we'll place the hot cocoa stand. And then out front, I want to include a couple of little chairs and tables as seating options, along with the truck, which I haven't added yet, but I didn't forget it. I will be adding it later. And then also on the left-hand side, I'm thinking of including another seating area with some log chairs, a bench, along with a little sauna heater. Since I decided to make it not be snowing for this build, it feels a little more believable to me that people might be sitting outside around the heater to enjoy their hot chocolate. Now that all of the bigger furniture items that I'm going to be using for this build are all placed, we get to move on to the fun little clutter and decor items next. So while I get all of those out and start placing those down, I will let y'all enjoy the rest of this little speed build and then catch up with y'all at the end of the video. now that those curtains are open, that is going to complete today's build. I'm gonna let Fauna know that we're all done with her new vacation home, and then we can take a look at the finished build. As we're wrapping up, thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 10. Y'all, welcome back to the channel. It is day 10 of the countdown to Christmas with HHP, and today's build is a Christmas market with Whitney. Today's build is going to be my first attempt to completely hide the villager's home in an HHP build as well, so we'll see how successful I end up being. But my hope is to use the medieval walls to hide the exterior of the house, and then maybe just change the roof color to tie in a little bit. But for now, I'm just gonna put the house in the corner and then start on my pathing. And in this build today, I'm going to completely cover the plot, and then anywhere I plan to use trees, I'll just remove those tiles. Though I don't think I'm going to be using too many trees in this build since it's supposed to be more of a town core type of feel. And I am using the same pathing as yesterday in Fauna's build, and I just downloaded one extra custom pattern as the border to kind of outline my little spaces here for the build, and then also create this little focal point in the center. After I finished all of my pathing, I realized that it looks so weird, and that is because I hadn't changed the season yet, so I needed to fix that real quick. And much better in the snow. So before I get started decorating this space, I want to see how the medieval walls are going to end up working. I want this build to be relatively symmetrical, at least to the extent possible, since I only have one house to work with here. So I think I'm going to see if there's anything I can use on the right-hand side to mimic the roof line. And the castle tower isn't necessarily a perfect replica, but I think it might be at least pretty close and make more sense to me at least than using one of the gazebos. So we're gonna give that a shot and see how that ends up looking. And it's not perfect, but I think it kind of works. It looks like it could be a building over there. And as you can see, I struggled a little bit with the placement of the walls. I didn't love the little gap that you can see between the walls that are horizontally facing and then the ones that are vertically facing, but I can only get so close with the entrance to that house, and I want to make sure both sides are symmetrical. So I played around with it for a little bit, but I do come back to this again, so where they are right now is not their final resting place. In the center of this Christmas market, I want to include a little Christmas display. So I'm going to be using all of the festive and ornament items that I have, and I really want this to look like a focal point. Since the path kind of leads your eye in that direction anyway, I want it to be this grand display. So while I get started on the stalls that I'm going to be using for this build, we can go ahead and get started with our festive question of the day. And today's question is, have you ever been to a Christmas market? I personally have not. I have always wanted to go. It's on my bucket list. Maybe someday in the future I'll get a chance to, but there's just something about them that seems so incredibly magical, and anyone that has had the chance to go, I am so jealous. Okay, and this is something that is very perplexing to me during the build, and I would love to know if one of y'all knows the answer to this. So when I had just exited decorating mode a minute ago, I showed up, like my little character, Girly Pop, showed up as being right at the entrance. But later on, whenever I'm exiting and entering decorating mode, I show up as being at the entrance of the house. So then at that point, I've boxed myself in and I couldn't get out to tell Whitney that the build was done. So I had to rearrange all these walls again. And I don't know if it's just because right now there's tons of space at the entrance for my character to spawn. And then maybe the problem is once I finished decorating, there was no more room, or if there's another reason for that. So if you happen to know the science behind this, I would love to know as well, because I was extremely confused while working on this. So we are nearing the end of the larger housewares furniture decorating, and then I'll switch gears to some of those small items that I'm planning on including in the little stall market area. But so far, I think the structure is looking how I wanted it to, and I really just need to clutter the space up now. So while I continue to work on all of those little items, I will let y'all enjoy the speed build and catch up with you at the end of the video. So with that final touch of changing the time of day and making it so I could get myself out of this trap that I created, that completes today's build. So I'm gonna go let Whitney know that we're all done with her new vacation home, and then we can take a look at the finished build. As we're wrapping up, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 11. Hi y'all, welcome back to the channel. It is day 11 of the countdown to Christmas with HHP, and today's build is a festive post office with Pete. I had initially wanted to do this build with Pelly or Phyllis, since in the old Animal Crossing games, they are the ones that worked in the post office, while Pete was out in the world doing mail deliveries. But unfortunately, I don't have either of their amiibo cards, so that wasn't an option for today. Luckily though, I do have Pete's, and I think he still works for this build. I did also think about building the post office outside, but ended up deciding on an interior build so I could play around with some wall decor. I got things started off by changing the wallpaper and adding in some partition walls to add some dimension to the space. It also does help make my little covered counters that I'll put into the build a little bit later appear more built-in. I also then decided to include some of the tall wooden island counter item to use on the back wall of the post office area. So while I collect some more of the items that I want to be using in today's build, I just wanted to wish you all a happy Toy Day. I've always thought it's kind of funny how Toy Day is on the 24th, but I guess it is also kind of nice that you get to play the event leading up to Christmas Day and then don't have to worry about it on the actual day, just in case you're really busy doing anything else that you wanted to spend your Christmas doing. With that though, today's festive question is, are you planning to play the Toy Day event in-game? I did play through it this morning, and it was just cute and fun getting to run around the island, handing out gifts in my little wannabe Jingle outfit. I do kind of wish the Toy Day event in New Horizons was a little similar to New Leaf, in the sense that you have to choose what gift to give each of your villagers, and they're dependent on some little clue. But I guess it's also nice that this event has no stress attached and you can just play for all of the good vibes. So a lot of the items I'm planning on using in this build are going to be very post office centric, so thinking like lots of cardboard boxes, some kind of utility items here and there. But to make it festive, I did also want to include a little seating area for letters to Santa. So I've included this tea table, a little stool, and then also going to include a steel trash can that I'm going to turn into a little letters to Santa mailbox, kind of like a little area for kids to come, write their letter, pop it in the little mailbox, and it's just cute and fun. And then the rest of the build will be more of a normal post office, I guess. So the room is finally starting to fill up a little bit, and I think what the real MVP of this build is, in my opinion, are these scattered papers. I absolutely love using them in any kind of office-y sort of type of build. I think it just is the perfect clutter item, helps eliminate so much empty floor space, and then you can also put these really cute little patterns on them. So on one of them that is closer to our Letters to Santa little area of the post office, it actually does have a little Dear Santa handwritten letter, and then the one over by the antique bureaus, which I included that more as like an office space if someone needed to either put some postage or anything else on their letter before sending it out. We have the little Christmas package, which just looks cute and like a little brochure. So the build is basically done, but now we're at the part that I think really helps transform the space, and that is using these glow-in-the-dark stickers with a couple of different custom patterns to look like individual little mail slots or boxes. And I'm going to completely cover this back wall, and I think it just looks great. Like, it really helps make the space come alive. Alrighty, with that final touch, that completes today's build. I'm gonna let Pete know that we're all done with his new vacation home. Although this isn't really a vacation, I'm basically putting him to work here as well, so that kind of sucks for Pete. But that's okay, then afterwards we can take a look at the finished build. So as we're wrapping up, thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 12. Hi y'all, welcome back to the channel. It is day 12 and the final day of the countdown to Christmas with HHP, and today's build is Jingle's Workshop. So first and foremost, if you celebrate today, I hope you have a very Merry Christmas. I know the holidays can be tough for people for a variety of reasons, but if that happens to be you, my wish for you is that you find some peace and happiness in some kind of way today. And my goal for today's build is a little bit different. I don't really care if this build looks cohesive. I don't really care if it has like a cool wow factor or like a focal point. I just want this build to be fun and to exude Christmas chaos. I want to use a bunch of different colors, a bunch of different toy items, and just have clutter all over the place with a couple of Christmas gnomes for good measure. Since I decided to make this room as large as I possibly could, I am going to be dividing it into two different sections. One, which will be in the back, is going to be home to the reindeer and Jingle's sleigh, and the remainder will be where the toys are built. And I'm going to be using the wood partition to divide the space. My question for all of you for today's build is, what is your favorite present that you received this year? And by present, I don't necessarily mean it needs to be wrapped under the tree. This could be a non-monetary present. Maybe the greatest gift of all this year was getting to spend some time with loved ones that you don't get to see on a more regular basis. Maybe you had a really great time either baking with some family members in the kitchen, or just whatever it may be. And if it is monetary, that totally works too. But I would love to know what your favorite part of this day was and what was the greatest gift you received. So it's about to get pretty crowded in here, but the method to my madness is that these project tables and the left-hand side of the room is going to be where the little garden gnomes are working. And then the right-hand side of the room will be where all of the finished toys go before they get put into Jingle's sleigh. While I work on cluttering up this build with all sorts of fun toys and accessories, I'll let y'all enjoy the rest of this speed build and catch up with you at the end of the video. And that concludes today's build, and this is also the finale of this mini-series. So I'll let Jingle know that his vacation home is all ready, and then we'll take a look at the finished build. As we're wrapping up, thank y'all so much for watching either this video or any part of the series. I really appreciate all of the views, likes, and comments, and I'll see y'all in the new year. Bye!